Hey guys, it's Matt Johnson with Viral Marketing. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the latest episode of the Talent Genius Hiring Mastermind, and we're here with John Pike, and we're going to get into some really great content. We're talking about some of the parallels between college basketball, the NCAA tournament just wrapping up, and John's really in the heart of that country and that rivalry between North Carolina and Duke. And so we're going to get into some really cool content. But first, I just want to welcome John and say thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing these masterminds.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So just to follow up on what we're going to learn today. So we're talking about some of the storylines with this recent tournament with kind of Wisconsin trying to get its revenge on Kentucky. Kentucky almost going undefeated, and then the thrill of the national championship game where freshmen really contributed to that victory. And we're talking about how that parallels with real estate brokerages and building and kind of maintaining the culture of a really talented, top performing team. And so we're gonna start there. But first, if you have any questions, that's why we do these on Google Hangouts, is so you can ask questions. So if you have them, post them as comments right on the Google Plus page. I'll keep an eye out for them. Or if you use the Q&A app, now that we're live, you can actually type them in and they'll come across right on our screen, and we can see them, and me and John can answer them right here on the Hangout. But first, let's get into it. So tell us a little bit about your experience watching the tournament and kind of what inspired you to do this Hangout and the parallels that you see between the tournament and real estate.
Sure, Matt. Well, for any basketball kind of aficionado, this is nirvana, right? Because I'm right here in the great state of North Carolina, where we got the Tar Heels and the Duke Blue Devils. It's the undisputed most, I guess, substantial and significant rivalry in college sports. Not only that, I have Wake Forest just around. We have NC State. We have lots of other colleges, in other things like UNCG, and it's just awesome. So, there was no shortage of really compelling storylines this year. And one of the biggest, of course, was the University of Kentucky, whether or not their team, which is, just to repeat, it's the 5th youngest NCAA men's basketball team in the entire country. So with their youth, were they able to, with an incredible amount of talent, run the table, go undefeated, and bring home the crown? Well, they fell just a little bit short, as we all know. And so because of the timing of the NCAA tournament, I thought it would be an ideal opportunity for us to use some really compelling parallels between talent, culture, performance, consistency, as it relates, athletics as it relates to business, because there are some significant parallels. Okay. So first of all, perhaps the most significant statement that I could make for anybody listening or that's going to be listening to this in the replay is this. Hiring no expense, okay, or no time invested can equal, right, the benefit of the right talent. Period. End of story. You can't manufacture talent. You can't really enhance someone's internal drive and motivation, their persistence, the ability to handle rejection, the ability to connect naturally with people. You can't manufacture. You can't reproduce that. So, we take a look at talent, for example. It's very interesting that Coach K this year, he's known as one of the all-time greats, not only in college, but as you know, he has the distinct privilege of being able to coach the NBA players as it relates to our national team for representing the United States at the Olympics. But this year, something very unique happened to him. First time in his tenure where he actually had to kick off one of his pretty good players off of the team. And that player was Suleiman, Rashid Suleiman. And, there was a lot of press, a lot of noise in the press saying that, they really doubted whether or not Coach K's chances, whether he was going to be able to pull out the championship this year because of that loss. Well, a couple of quick things that I pulled out from the media. One of the things that Coach K said about Rashid Suleiman, he said that he was unable to consistently live up to our standards. Okay, unable to consistently live up to our standards. Now, this is something that is a very frequent, very common dilemma for people that are broker owners of real estate agencies. Okay, what happens is this: inevitably, a conversation goes something like this. I have quite a few mediocre players, people that are kind of average. Do I keep them? Do I release them? What's really the right decision to make? And ultimately, my answer almost every single time to that is it really depends. It depends on you. It depends on your environment, your situation, your culture. But another person said, made a comment with regards to Rashid Suleiman as follows. It was this: his talent does not outweigh his issues. So let's take a look at that, or for that for a moment. His talent does not outweigh his issues. So if there is more negativity, more drama, or more things that are causing pain in terms of, as you compare it to the person's contributions, then it's time to let that person go. Okay, plain and simple. Let me give you a quick example. I just got finished from a little road trip. I still enjoy going, in person to some of these offices, some of these great clients that I have, and one of them was Glenda Williamson in Decatur, Illinois. And it's interesting, as we were doing a team call with her, two of the people on her team, actually, it was apparent, were not a really good fit. In fact, they weren't a very good fit at all. So you might say, in some regards, that the inmates were kind of running the asylum. Okay. And she was kind of frustrated with all of the negativity and the drama and the complaining and just the poor attitudes that was basically bringing everybody else on the team down. It was just a real drag, a real source of contention. So when I was doing the team call, I had no idea. I was not told in advance what person, who was in what role. I just basically took a look at their profiles, and basically I'm able to guess, very accurately, if the person's a buyer's agent, an admin, etc. Well, we came to one person, and I actually said, based on your disc profile, there's no question in my mind that you're an admin. Well, the problem was that I was wrong in this instance. This person was actually in sales, but had really no business being in sales because her personality profile was clearly atypical, clearly not up to the standard of somebody who was a consistent performer. And as we got talking later, that in fact was the case. She was a very low performer. She was one of those people that had more issues, all right, than the benefit or the value that she was bringing. So in that case, let me just and I'm going to have Glenda on as one of my guests so she can tell you firsthand. But essentially, Glenda is having a great quarter. She's actually doing higher volume at this time this year than she was at this time last year with less people.
Really?
And one of the biggest benefits to her is now it's hard for her to even imagine why she was dealing with the chaos and the craziness and the negativity that these two people were causing. It was like a cancer that was infecting the rest of the company. Once she got rid of those two people, it was immeasurably better, not only in terms of their performance, but also just what it felt like to work at her organization.
Yeah, and that's kind of an X factor in all this. You can't always take that individual person in isolation and say, does their individual talent outweigh their individual negativities? Because everybody affects everybody else on the team. You can't look at it in isolation.
Well, especially when you're talking about people that work in the office, and it really changes the temperature and the climate of what it feels like to work there. And simply stated, I'm sure she would have made the decision sooner had she known what incredible benefit it has been now that they're gone. Now they're off at a competitor, and they're basically doing the same thing because people don't change their stripes, right? They only change in the movies. So they're going to bring the same stuff that they had at her operation and her office to the next one. So here's another thing that I wanted to mention, though. So the loss of Rashid, in his freshman and sophomore years, I think he started every single game. Now, in his junior year, they brought in a real strong contingent of new talent like Tyus Jones and Justice Winslow and Okafor. And so, a lot of the people out there in the media were saying, based on his contributions, it's doubtful whether or not Coach K has enough other talent on the bench to be able to make up for the loss of Suleiman. So what's interesting, and now we know, we can see it perfectly, right? Because we know what's happened in terms of the past, but an individual by the name of Grayson Allen, who's also a freshman, stepped up in an incredible manner and is perhaps one of the big deciding factors as to why they actually won the national championship. Because in the final game, I think he had something like 16 points in the third quarter at a very crucial time. He basically put the team on his shoulders and scored some very pivotal points and had a couple of steals and things like that. So the point is this, as we relate this to business, is that your bench strength, okay, is absolutely crucial, right? You never know. In fact, I don't think there's maybe been one or two teams that I have evaluated thus far in the last 2 years that have not had people on their team who had one foot out the door. In other words, they had question marks and some ambiguity and uncertainty as to whether or not they were going to be working, for the leader. And it's about 90 to 95% accurate. And, being able to have that information and do this evaluation, we're able to kind of proactively have these conversations and sometimes salvage great people from leaving. But the thing is that, sometimes what happens if you lose your top one, your best player or your second best player? Maybe it's no fault of your own. Maybe it's a reload. Maybe a spouse gets a six-figure job and has to leave the region. So, what are you going to do? You've got to continually be working on your bench strength. And that's what I'm finding some of the best in the top 1% are continuously advertising and searching for more great talent to bring in. Take a look at people like Mark Spain and Jeff Cook and Fred and Tammy Holmes and Danny and Rebecca Burks. I mean, these are people that aren't just looking to fill one position. They have it open so that they're continuing to exhaust the marketplace to find the best talent possible to make contributions.
So let's keep going on that. So let's assume that you take that advice. You're in a position of leadership, and so you're constantly evaluating, constantly keeping the radar up, constantly, whether it's ads or whether you're using search firms, whatever the case is, but you're constantly keeping the radar up for that next level of talent, that next generation of people that can come in and either replace or reload your team. So let's get into maybe the culture point, the aspect of it about how putting great talent into it needs the right culture. So if you want to talk about culture a little bit and what that means to you and how that affects really top performing talent.
Sure. Well, interestingly, Matt, part of my background includes having done an MBA thesis paper on whether it's the internal motivations that an individual brings or it's the external conditions in which they work that really contribute the most to their productivity, to their performance. And interestingly, with most types of theses, you're trying to look for, is it one or is it the other? And what I found, and this is going back 25 years ago, or 30 actually, I did an exhaustive study of everything I could get my hands on in terms of all the articles and all the prominent periodicals and things like that, Sloan Management, HBR, I mean, all the trusted and tried publishers out there. And what I found at the end of the day is that it's really not one or the other. It's a combination of the two. So the main takeaway is this. First of all, the business owner has to make sure that as one of the key 3 dynamics or dimensions in terms of what a great hire is going to possess, that they have the right motivation. Not only they have the right motivation, but they have the right amount of that motivation, okay? And then secondly, they also have to make sure that that person is going to fit into the culture of that organization. And we just prefaced Glenda Williamson as a classic example, where she brought on 2 people that she thought were going to be okay, that were going to be good. They had industry experience, but most times a lot of people have maybe they have 18 years of experience, but it's really 1 year of experience repeated 18 times, right? They're not going to be a high impact player.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but let's talk a little bit further about culture, because another question that I often get, where people are looking for my advice is, should I hire people who are a current licensed agent who have experience, or should I hire superstars from other industries, people that are great salespeople, but they're not licensed. So I'm going to have to go through a period of time where they're going to have to go through and get licensed, and then we're going to have to spend, more time training them. So again, the answer to that really is it depends on you. It depends on your organization. It depends on the culture. It depends on your past performance. It depends on a whole lot of factors that really, as a business owner, you have to weigh. Some people don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the personnel or the time themselves personally to be able to do a lot of hand-holding and to spend the time doing the training. So they're going to, by default, they're going to rely on people who are already licensed, that have already bringing experience to the table, who incidentally are definitely going to be bringing some bad habits with them. Okay. Now, we can find those people. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of when you interview them, 80% of the decision really is on the quality of their profile, their results. The remaining 20% of the factor on the choice and the decision has to do with how do they interact with you in person, how articulate, right? How well do they communicate? How well do they listen? In terms of them asking questions, etc. And then also, what type of a fit do you think they're going to be to the rest of the team? Those are the two most important factors in that remaining 20% of the decision criteria. So let me just give you a quick example. Rebecca and Danny Burks in Tyler, Texas, they will be in the top 10 in the country, in the entire United States this year in terms of their performance for RE/MAX. Okay, they are killing it. Okay, they are really doing well. And what's perhaps the most compelling about the storyline of their success is the size of the town that they're in. Okay, in terms of if you take a look at their performance, right, to how many people live in their town, right, it's a lot more exceptional and compelling than it is, for example, if somebody lived in a major metropolis like Dallas, Texas. Yeah. Okay, because there's a lot less density of population. But one of the things that I find very interesting, and one of the keys to their success, in the past, they had hired people in the early stages, in the early going, that had industry experience. And their experience with that was not favorable. It was not very good at all. So what they decided as a result of that was that they would only exclusively hire people that did not have any industry experience. In other words, they were taking people from other segments of business who had strong track records of success. They were very strong salespeople, and then they patiently worked with them through the licensing process, and then bringing them into their unique culture, systems, infrastructure, everything, and teaching them their way on how to do things. Now, I haven't asked Danny and Rebecca to be a guest, but that they would be phenomenal guests as a result of the leadership in terms of what they've been able to create, where they've been able to create it, and then the performance that they're seeing, okay, is staggering. Yeah. So we're definitely going to have to make the ask to have them, participate. Now, sometimes with some of the clients that I work with, I'm advocating both. Not just an either or. Sometimes you can pick off people that are disenfranchised that are phenomenal heavy hitters. Right. Okay. Excellent, right? Real estate agents basically today. They got the pedigree, the track record, etc. For whatever reason, right? They're looking to make a change. That's going to be a good ad. And then we also concurrently at the same time are advertising in the sales section, the non-real estate areas, to attract people to this incredible, unlimited, right, in terms of commission opportunity for that a lot of salespeople never even really considered. Yeah. But it can be a gold mine for the right people. Yeah. So, and then in some instances, we've actually done quite a bit of assessment with veterans, right? Because why? Because they have the discipline, the work ethic, all right, the team ability, the leadership, kind of DNA built right in typically. Those are some folks that have also really been significant contributors as well. So
yeah, that's interesting. You're the only one I've heard that's ever said that, but I can definitely see that. And I'm sure coming from the sports world, you can agree that a lot of people that come out of that world as well, whether it's high level college basketball, football, will also have a lot of those same qualities.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, to me, the analogy that springs to my mind of hiring experienced real estate salespeople versus trying to recruit people out of other industries is kind of like the difference between bringing a JUCO player versus recruiting someone steadily that's in their junior year of high school as a college coach, and you have to nurture them and bring them along. In the long run, if you look at the great college coaches, yeah, they'll bring in some JUCO players here and there that maybe add some occasional punch, their specialty player, but really the foundation is the ones that they really have to nurture long term, because those are the ones that end up fitting in the best, and they have the biggest ceiling on their talent that not everyone has seen yet.
Right. Well, you know, it's an interesting dilemma now with some of the changes in terms of recruiting, that a lot of the reasons why people select a school like University of Kentucky or Duke is because they can prepare them in the quickest fashion for the next level, for the NBA. So you've got the one and done rule. So you've got a lot of kids that are going to come in where they're high school phenoms, and you know they're probably only going to be there for 1 year. Now, do you get some advantages and some additional mileage or value when some of these kids make a decision to come back? Absolutely. You know, in fact, to that point, I was with Pam and Josh Roy in Wichita, Kansas, and presenting to their team. And the day that I left, one of the headline marquee storylines on the paper was that two of the best players from the Shockers are returning next season. They've made a decision that, hey, we're not done yet. Our journey's not complete. We have more to accomplish. We're going to stay for an extra year, which definitely is great news for all the Shockers fans out there. And I got to put in this shameless plug. Beating the Kansas Jayhawks, okay, made a lot of people upset and an awful lot of people happy. So, you know, what a great legacy they're starting to build. And, you know, because of excellent leadership, because of bringing in great talent, because of things like continuity. So, you know, a very hot topic amongst a lot of broker owners is, how do I keep or retain my existing people? In fact, it's typically on the forefront of their mind before they even hire somebody. Should I even go ahead and take the risk of hiring them, knowing that this great person may go ahead and be competing with me in the near future, right? Is it worth my time and effort? So let me just make a couple of comments on that, because when I was, you know, with Josh and Pam for the day, after the session, the training session that we did, he shared with me that, you know, he's been in the business for 16 years, and his experience with the hiring process has been so incredibly, for a lack of a better word to find, hellacious. Okay. Just an incredible suck of time and a drain. It's almost like a full-time job when you're going through the interviewing process to try to make sure, right, that you're trying to get the right people, because it's that important. You don't want somebody that's going to be a cancer to poison the well. You want to do your best to make sure that they're not going to be mediocre or just average. Otherwise, there's no point in hiring them. And what I find the vast majority of the time, as important as entrepreneurs know that great talent is the key to their success, based on their personal experience, they almost roll over and give up. They don't want to do it anymore. Right? Because it takes so much time and effort that their success rate's probably only like maybe 20% at best. And after 2 years, there's probably about a 95% turnover rate of the people that they've hired.
Yeah.
So, Matt, let's talk for a few minutes about how do we eliminate all this frustrating guesswork, all this cost, and then at the end of the day, you're no farther ahead because they end up leaving, or you have to fire them because they don't perform anyway.
Right.
So going back to the sports analogy, you know, we take a look at the NFL or the NBA. What do they do? Okay, with all the upcoming great talent that's coming up, they put them through a comprehensive combine. Okay, in fact, they even show it for the last few years. They've even shown it on TV, where you can have access to, you know, their vertical jump, their standing broad jump, their 40-meter time, their wingspan. I mean, their shooting effectiveness, you know, their passing effectiveness. I mean, they literally assess and go through all these drills to get a really clear handle on their current level of performance in terms of their metrics, but also to get an idea of what they think their upside potential, you know, can be.
Okay.
So If we take that, because the investment is so huge, okay, in terms of making a selection, right? Same thing with a new hire. The investment of time and money is substantial. They're going to fit into the rest of the team, etc. So it would then, if the professional sports are doing that, don't you think that we can take some principles from that around the incredible amount of assessment that they do on each of the people, and basically mirror that exact same approach,
Right.
where we want to eliminate as much of the risk as possible of them not being a good person or not performing. So what do? We evaluate them in a very, very comprehensive manner. And that's where the assessments that we deliver and that we utilize come into play.
Right.
It's not just a one-dimensional assessment, which takes a look at personality styles, such as the DISC. DISC is a great standalone instrument, but it's woefully inadequate and incomplete because it measures only one dimension of the person, which is their personality style. There is so much more than that in terms of, we've already prefaced the motivators. Do they have the right motivators and the right intensity of those motivators? And then the most important of all, do they have the right innate talent? So ultimately, we can't tell in an interview what a person's talents are like. We're relying on only the 10% of what we see in front of us, how well they interact with us, how well they, maybe their intellectual horsepower, how professionally and quickly they're able to answer maybe some difficult questions. Okay, maybe we do a role play and we actually see, how they approach the sales process. And so we're really relying on a very, very small amount of information. So those who have the highest amount of information or the most amount of information are the ones that are best prepared to make the best decision.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how
the great thing about assessments is it removes the personality of the interviewer out of the equation.
That's true. That's one of the many benefits. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're as someone, I'm sure that you've done this, you've hired people for years. It's difficult sometimes to take yourself out of it and say, okay, yes, this person was good at building rapport with me. That is not the same thing as being qualified for the job I'm asking them to do. And I think that's what a lot of people get caught up with. They tend to maybe hire the people that they feel the best about, which means they've built really good rapport with the person that's doing the interviewing, without stepping back and having an objective tool to say, all rapport, all intelligence and aside, and all how they performed in the interview aside, what are the objective standards that I need for them to do this job?
Right. And so, owners, as important as interviewing is, it's a separate skill. Most people don't do it very often. They haven't really received any training for it.
Mm-hmm.
But even if that is the case, even if they've had some world-class training, they got great questions, how are you able to decipher the response of 5 candidates who basically say this almost the same thing?
Yeah.
Because people are going to tell you what you want to hear, and they're going to put their best foot forward. They're not going to say, I suck in this, or, that kind of thing. So, so it's really a black hole. I mean, I'm certainly an advocate, and I provide my clients with some very good questions to ask. But even if you're asking the very best questions, how do you decipher, right, with accuracy, whether or not the first person or the fifth person is the best person in terms of going to be able to do the results based on them giving you similar answers? At least that's the feedback that I've been constantly given by a lot of the broker owners that are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why it goes back to that objective assessment. So you've got, you've got your assessment, you've got a good set of interview questions. You ask everybody kind of the same questions so you get good baselines on everybody. Is there anything else, any more practical steps that someone can take as a broker owner right now to improve their hiring? And then we'll get into a couple of other things in the last few minutes we've got left.
Well, one of the added capabilities that we've just enlisted recently is we actually provide custom interview questions for each unique applicant, and it's specifically taken based on their scores.
Wow.
So if there's an area of challenge, say, for example, someone's 90% of who they are in all these important areas are in the top 10%. But we've got one area in 1%, another area, however, that's a little bit of a red flag, meaning that their score is lower. So we need to address that. We need to drill into that. we need to find out a little bit more about that. We can ask some questions that are specifically niche to that specific individual. So as important as there are to have some questions that are generalized, right? There's also some equal opportunity and importance for asking some very specific questions. So give you, whether it's admin or whether it's sales, it's the same concept. So we could ask maybe that a person's C score is moderate. It's not extreme, or it's not like in the 60s or 70s or 80s, and yet this person is going to be an admin role. So we can actually ask them questions specific to that and ask for some examples of whether or not they are, challenged as it relates to organization, being thorough and precise. Because if that's the backbone of what you're looking for in the job, right, and the person's only moderate, but that's why we have 2 other assessments that help complete the picture. But it's important for us to ask the question and articulate it and get some response from them, to kind of complete the loop, to close the loop.
Okay.
That's just one example.
Right. That's really interesting. I think there's definitely a huge opportunity if you know exactly what someone's assessment is to be able to zero in and ask them very specific questions. So that makes total sense. I'd be excited to see how that applies. But so in the last few minutes, let's get into discretionary effort a little bit, and the commitment versus compliance, and how discretionary effort can really cost you physical dollars. It can cost you time. It can cost you emotional investment in the wrong team members, and how that plays out.
Absolutely. So, let me just mention something that I do with every client that I work with, and it is a game changer. I know that word gets used an awful lot, but I think when you hear what I had to say, you'll agree with me. Okay, because we have such a high level of exceptional data, knowledge, and insight. In fact, it could be said that we know more about the people that we're hiring than they know about themselves. We know what they do, why they do what they do, with what intensity they do it with. Okay, we know what their capabilities are in terms of how naturally or easily they're able to do the things that we're asking them of, etc. So this is what a conversation typically starts out like with me after we hire somebody. It's typically the first week they're on board. We basically would say, Matt, if it's you, Matt, congratulations. We're thrilled that you're a member of our team. Out of the 100+ people that have applied to this position, we selected you, and there's a very good reason for it. And basically we say it's not a matter of if you're going to be successful, but how successful you can become. Because what we know about you is that your personality style, what it is that's important to you and what motivates and drives you, and then those natural talents that you have, those aptitudes, those things that you naturally do innately well, are perfectly lined up in such a fashion that you are in the top 10% of the best people in this industry that perform consistently at a high level. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, compare that, telling a new employee, brand new hire, first week they're hired, that compared to holding your breath and waiting for 90 days and hoping that they make it past the probationary period, or more appropriately, that who they said they were in the interview is who shows up every day, on the job. So then what we proceed to do is and I do this in advance, how to best communicate and interact with that new employee. What's their communication style? Okay. Also, how do you create the most compelling work environment for that employee? What is it that motivates and drives them? Okay. And then if there's any areas of opportunity or blind spots, we document that. But more important than that, what are those things that they naturally, innately do well so that they're in their element, they're in the zone, they're in the sweet spot, so to speak, in terms of the tasks and day-to-day functions of what they're handling. So that person is so much more affirmed and fulfilled. Why? Because they're performing consistently tasks that are effortless. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about a person who's totally committed to what they're doing because they have a thorough intrinsic desire and love of what they're doing, enjoyment, versus the person who, and this is like 80% of the population, they've got one foot going in front of the other. They're in that wheel. They're stuck. They're in the rat race. They know they're not very good at what they do, but they're just having to plod along because they've got obligations and responsibilities. Most people are risk averse, and they'll just continue to do what they've always done.
Yeah.
And that, sadly, the contrast. It's a powerful contrast. Like Steve Jobs said, you can take a handful of A-plus players that can run circles around B and C, a whole host of B and C players pretty much. So,
Yeah.
And what I'm finding too is why this is so compelling is that, when you're a small company, when I say small, I'm saying somewhere between 4 and 20 people. Each person matters significantly more in terms of their contribution than if you have a company that's got 1,000 people in it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because there's no place to hide, right? We want everybody to be a significant contributor. So that's why this is such an incredible godsend to people like Josh, who they don't want to handle it. They don't want to deal with it because after 15 years of a lot of failure and a lot of wasted time, they get to the point where they're almost like, well, I don't even want to do it anymore. So outsourcing this specialty to somebody that uses a proven time-tested science, okay, that's validated, can be absolutely huge.
Yeah, liberating too. Yeah, and let's get back to so you mentioned something about people being risk averse and they'll keep doing what they're doing. And you as the leader, if you've got someone like that on your team, you can also fall into that trap of being risk averse and letting them continue to keep doing what they've always done. And you keep letting them be on the team because it's what you've always done. And
Right.
And how that leads in with the people that are risk averse are going to be the ones that give you the discretionary effort. They'll do just enough to not lose their job, but they're not going to be able to give you the top performance that you need to really get ahead. They'll maintain maybe, but you can't really grow that way.
Right. Absolutely. So, yeah, the people that are best suited for their role are going to give you more effort, more energy, right, more vibrancy. The people that really are just kind of the status quo. I mean, there's some shocking statistics and data around, half of the total work population do the bare minimum just to hang on to their job. Was one from a 25-year research study that Harvard did. That was just one of many of the statistics that they secured.
Yeah.
So really, that's why it's so important. You can't have somebody that's just going through the motions or that really doesn't enjoy what they're doing or they're just bringing home a paycheck. I mean, you can tell the difference, right? You can absolutely tell the difference. And how many people do you know of, all friends, all family, all colleagues, former, employers, current one, who you just say, wow, that person, right, is amazing. They were designed to be doing what they're doing. It's kind of cool, sometimes when I travel and I get to hear owners, say firsthand that, for example, Pam Roy made an incredibly encouraging and amazing comment about one of their new hires, and basically said that one new hire alone has been worth its weight in gold. So it could be one person, just one person that's going to, make that difference to you to get you to the next level.
Yeah. And I just have a quick question before we wrap things up, just more of a personal curiosity. If you were in the position of, let's say, a team leader, brokerage owner, what have you, you're recruiting all the time. You stumble on, and you don't need someone right then, but you stumble on an A player, and I mean an A plus. Let's say it's a salesperson from another industry that's crushing it, and they're unhappy and they're looking for somewhere to go. When you stumble across that talent, what do you do? Are you an advocate of just find a place, get them in the team, get them on board, find them something to do, or nurture them until you have the right role? Or do you approach it from, you want to fill your defined roles with very defined people that fit those exact roles and not deviate? I'm curious what your opinion is.
Well, there's like I said before, probably another one of these masterminds. There's two challenges to every company: sales and everything else. Okay, so if it's sales and they're a superstar salesperson, I'm going to make room for them. Totally. Okay, whether it just doesn't matter. If I come across somebody who's got what I call the sales DNA, and it's not a matter of whether they're going to be a consistent top performer. They could be like the number one person in my company within the first year.
Yeah.
Why would I not do anything and everything I can, right? What's my risk? Virtually nothing. Virtually nothing when you're using these diagnostics. Okay, now I also advocate now, for example, I've had some clients who maybe have brought in 3 people at a time when they're onboarding 3 different people, and this one person in particular had this person who's the best salesperson he'd ever seen, and he was just he couldn't believe that he found somebody of such high caliber and quality, but yet he waited to what you're talking about. He was dragging his feet because he had these other 3 people that he was trying to bring on board, and he didn't. He wanted to be a little bit more ready in terms of his structure and so forth, because he only had, I think, 3 people in the company at that time. So he doubled the size of his company overnight, and now he's got this superstar salesperson. Well, because he didn't make the offer, he lost her. Okay, so I think that hindsight's 2020. He realized that he should have made the offer sooner. But in the cases where for some reason you're not able to, then you need to stay connected to that person. You need to invite he or she and their spouse out for dinner, right? You need to start developing that trust and that rapport. Okay, so that maybe you have an agreement that in 2 months you're going to bring them on board. Maybe, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances. Maybe the good salesperson has got some commissions based on some prior performance, and they have to wait 3 months before they get their big bonus.
Yeah.
You still need to stay, kind of connected a little bit and touch in with the person periodically. Okay. In some cases, what we have done with our clients is we have actually encouraged our clients to invite some of their people that are going to be hired, aren't on the payroll yet, they're not a part of the company, to some of the trainings that we do. And the response has always been, wow, I'm blown away, right? That you're receiving this quality of training, and they get to see the quality of the people, and they get to hear the dialogue and see firsthand. That's also powerful. If you can swing that, that's also something that you can do.
Yeah. Very good. So, so as it relates to culture and talent, what's the one question that I'm not asking you that I probably should have? Is there anything else that you want to get out there on this subject of fitting the right talent into the right culture?
What really comes to mind is that, more so than anything, Matt, is that there's a tremendous amount of despair.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of maybe disillusionment, or people have been so jaded and have spent so much time and money, and they're just throwing it down the drain. And they know this going in, and they have nothing else as a frame of reference to go by. Okay. Don't talk to me, all right? Because I've done this for the last 25 years. I'm a huge advocate of this because I see the transformational impact that this makes. Talk to some of my clients. Get their perspective and their view. There is hope. There is a scientifically validated way to get the kind of leaders and the talent that you're seeking. It's not through placing an ad and relying on looking at a resume or just getting 10% of the information by an interview, because that's always going to lead you astray. So my passion is to try to get as many people to understand of what a breakthrough this is and what potential value they're missing out on by maintaining that jaded, skeptical perspective. Oh, I've heard this and heard that, and I've tried all this stuff and it hasn't worked. Okay, that's perhaps at the heart of maybe the biggest opportunity and the biggest need, right, that business owners have. Because if you can hire the right talent, put the people in the right seat, I mean, nothing can more dramatically impact anyone's business. We talk about, people are our most important asset and human capital. How do you know? You don't really know. It's just a slogan for most companies.
Yeah.
Right. And so this frustration around, why is it that this person can't do anything more than what I'm asking them to do? Well, first of all, you'll be able to know based on the science of these reports what their threshold is, if they have upside potential, and if they do, where is that upside potential? Maybe it's in a role that they're not in currently, which is why they're not performing at a high level. All of those things will be crystal clear to you.
So I want to make sure that we give people a chance and an opportunity to connect with you and to learn more about this and see, some of your other hangouts that you've done with clients, where they can hear in their own words kind of the experience that you've taken them through and the results that they're getting. So for everybody that's curious about this, just remember to go to thetalentgenius.com. And that's where they can. And then, John, if they want to contact you personally, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Best way they can reach me is via cell phone. It's 336-210-0327. Again, 336-210-0327. That number and my email is actually on my website, thetalentgenius.com. So if you want to connect with me or have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you. Life is too short not to have brilliant people around you, and not to have, right, not for everybody to be kind of in the zone and firing on all cylinders. Yeah. And that's really what, at the end of the day, everybody wants, but the vast majority of people will never have, because they're not basically implementing the right types of processes to get there.
Right. Yep, and with that, I think we'll wrap it up there. We've gone over a lot of stuff. This live event is recorded, obviously, and is stored right here on this Google Plus page, and will also go up on thetalentgenius.com as well for future viewing. So, John, thanks so much. I appreciate you sharing. We got into a lot of great stuff. If anybody has questions, I would encourage them just to post them right on the Google Plus page so you can keep an eye out, and I know that you're always willing to answer questions directly as well. So,
thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time.